Hello, and welcome to another episode of The End of the Search. This one I call it, What is this thing called enlightenment? And it's based on a question somebody says. Hi Nick, I normally watch the videos because they serve as a reminder to me, and I wanted to take advantage of the possibility that in case you've been asked more than once, or I don't know if you have any videos of that, but was your awakening gradual, or did you suddenly have in your experience some kind of revelation of whatever type, as some teachers who had an experience that changed them have related? In my case, my teacher was Shri, and I prefer not to mention names. And well, supposedly in her presence I had the awakening of Kundalini. But I don't think I remember any experience in any different or special way. It does seem that in a mental level it developed as a space that cannot be defined, but that is like a kind of distance that is like stillness. Hugs. Okay. Well, there's a couple of things I would like to point out here. The person asked me if my awakening was gradual. I have never said that I am awakened. I have never said in any video that I am an awakening individual or that I have awakened. You see, this is the trap that sometimes people may begin to conjure up their own ideas. I've never said that. So the question if my awakening was gradual, I don't know what it means by that. Then it talks about, or did you suddenly have in your experience some kind of revelation or whatever type, as some teachers who had an experience that changed them have revealed. Okay, and another thing that I do my best to clarify is that I'm not a teacher. You see, I am not a teacher, and I have never awakened or anything like that. What I point to is to the obviousness that the fact that if I don't identify with the content of the mind, the suffering dissipates, the seeking dissipates, because it's obvious that thought is what makes believe that I am a person, that I'm an individual. So technically speaking, if you want to use the word awakening, for lack of a better word, is the recognition that if I don't believe the thoughts, then I'm experiencing the peace that passes all understanding. And to me, that would be awakening. You see, it's not about a particular experience that seems to happen to me. You see, because the problem is that if I have any kind of experience, I don't know, particular sensation or feeling or anything that I consider to be awakening, that being an experience, when I go back to to life itself, which is as it unfolds, which is the most ordinary thing, the tendency is to try to seek that experience again. See, because there's a tendency of thinking that enlightenment looks in a particular way. That enlightenment means that I'll be in Kundalini forever, or I'll be in a space of, or that I'll be in bliss forever. And these concepts, unfortunately, that some people call them awakening or so, are actually distractions to the obviousness of life, which life simply is. You see, if you don't believe the content of the mind, if you don't believe your thoughts, I didn't say the thoughts will not be there, they will be there, but if you stop believing them, then you realize, oh my God, this is it. So if you ask me how this became crystal clear to me, is the most ordinary thing. When I was dealing with the most challenging or painful experiences, and realizing that that was just part of life, and the only thing that would cause suffering was me letting the thoughts interpret the experience. When that was seen, then it was like, oh my God, so life is just the most ordinary thing. There's no such thing as an awakening, but if you want to use that word, awakening is to realize that this is it. That's why when in Zen it says, before enlightenment or awakening or whatever, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment or awakening, it doesn't matter, chop wood, carry water. You see, that is so difficult to understand, because the mind thinks that before enlightenment I'm going to feel or think or whatever in a particular way, and after enlightenment something extraordinary is going to happen. You see, this is the trap. This is the trap of the seeker. Okay, and if somebody have had some sort of an experience, that can fuel the character, the seeker. You see, that now is trying to pursue that experience because he believes that that is enlightenment. That is when I hear, for example, people who tell experiences about, I felt that I was one with everything and all that stuff, which is, I respect that, and I don't discredit that, but the problem with that is that that creates an image that also enlightenment must look like that, and then they try to pursue that. You see, they try to emulate or try to imitate that, and that just generates frustration because it makes someone more special. Oh, that's person. Look what that person, that experience it had. In reality, it's the most ordinary thing. Is the recognition that if I don't believe the content of the mind, then what is left is what is. I am, and that is the famous, I guess, enlightenment, or whatever you want to call it. Otherwise, again, it's going to be fueling the belief in a seeker. When somebody have an experience, when they feel that they're one with everything, I said, you know what, if you want to have that experience, we can be self-induced. All you have to do is go to your doctor, someone who you trust, somebody who is trusted. I prefer to go to the doctor if it's possible, that you can tell him or her, do you have any hallucinogens? I think that's what the word is. That, of course, nothing extreme, but something that you know that it would not have any particular effects or heavy consequences. Not something you can find on the streets or whatever. May just get somebody who knows what he's doing or what she's doing, and under their supervision, just take it, and then you find yourself this, whatever the case may be. Well, then there you go. That's just an experience. But the fact that you can talk about it, see, cannot be it, because what we're talking about here is not conceptual. You see, if I can talk about the experience, that implies that someone had that experience, so that is not it. I remember a minister in the United States many years says, this is the thing about God. If you can think about it, that's not it. If you can imagine it, that's not it. If you can feel it, that's not it. If you can hear it, if you can see it, that's not it. Why? Because the experience of a human being, which is just a thought anyway, in all that there is, but this experience is a limitation. You see, the fact that I can see, I can hear, whatever, all of that is a limitation. And trying to perceive or to see or to experience the real from the limitation is impossible. When you're in bed and you're dreaming, in the dream, which is a thought from the mind that is dreaming it, in the dream you cannot experience the dreamer of the dream. It's impossible, because the dream itself, it's a projection, it's an illusion, and you cannot try to bring reality into illusions. You see, that's why the enlightenment or the awakening is not for the person. There is no person. You see, now within the seeming experience of a dream, the closest we can get to what an enlightenment experience would not be an experience, because experiences are transitory, would be the recognition that I am, and the way that recognition is already established is when I don't believe any thought that suggests otherwise. So right now you are enlightened, and you are awake right now. It doesn't matter how your life look like. If you don't believe any thoughts, that's it. You see? So when I talk about this, the person might have interpreted as if I have enlightened or if I have awakened. Again, I have never said that, and I never suggest or that I have enlightenment or anything. I haven't achieved anything. I'm just pointing to the obvious, that somehow life is using this instrument to remember of. I am not any different than you, because you and I are the same energy source. We are the same source. in the world of illusion, at the superficial level, it appears as if I am different than you, because there's perception. You perceive something different than I. In the camera you see an image, and then you see yourself as another image, and that is perception. And because of that, and that is thought, by the way, and because of that perception, there's an appearance that you are something different than me, that I am something different than you, because we're caught in the world of perception. You see, a lot of people may say babies have thoughts or so. I would say, I would look at it, I would say it this way. A baby simply is. It hasn't learned the capacity to differentiate or to evaluate or anything. It simply is, right? Thoughts could appear in the same way that images seems to appear, but the baby does not see any difference. The baby does not see any difference between him and what it sees, or what it's being seen. Better yet, it's not even what he or she sees, it's what it's being seen. The baby does not perceive any difference between him and what is being heard. You see? Sensations or feelings are not personal. The baby doesn't say, I am feeling this. Feelings and sensations appear, you see? Well, we are the wholeness, but because we have the capacity of identify with the thought says these feelings are mine, because the thought I person, you know, that's what I call the original sin, you know, otherwise known as the fall. The thought, you see, the thought I person makes believe that, or not even I person, the sense of this, you see, makes believe that this is separate from everything else. And then thoughts, they just appear, but I tend to take ownership of them. I am thinking the thoughts. These are my thoughts. I'm thinking them. These are my feelings. I am feeling them. You see, because there's a center, there's a point of reference now from which everything seems to be happening to me. Without that reference, without that point of reference, nothing is happening to me. Things are just happening. Thoughts are happening. Seeing is seen. It's happening. Hearing is happening, or seem to be happening. You see, but nothing is happening to anyone, because there's no point of reference. But the thought that says this is what I am becomes the point of reference. That's when someone who may have a particular experience, like again, you know, with a hallucinogen, I don't know how to pronounce it, you know, or without it, you know, might have had an experience like that, but all of a sudden the mind disengaged, and it's just like one with the whole, and then it believes that's enlightenment, and now it tries to pursue that, and that keeps reinforcing the belief in the individual, because now there's an individual who is a seeker, you see, and that's when it gets very, very confusing. This happened to me. So when I had a colonoscopy, they asked me if I wanted to do it with sedated or not. I said, yeah, just put me sedated. So so the thing is that after the anesthesia started to, you know, go away, I don't know what words to use, it was interesting because there was a moment in which everything was being perceived, you know, images, but the mind has not engaged yet, you see. And I have a friend of mine, she was holding my hand as I was just awakening from it. But there was this sensation, I don't know, again, the mind hasn't engaged yet. It just like, I was, you know, I was in this, you know, this is just what is. And then little by little, the mind begins to interpret and register. Oh, okay, I'm recognizing that image. Oh, okay, that's my friend. Okay, my holding my hand. And then the mind engaged, you see, and it appears as if I was seeing, I was feeling, I was talking to a friend, but in reality, before the mind engaged, I was live, that's it. See what I'm talking about? Well, that right now, this is it. Right now, you are live. But the problem is that the mind is taking the present experience and is interpreting, is translating it. So that's why I say you're alive, and you said, no, I am alive. I person am alive. I am the one who's watching this video. I am hearing. I am seeing. I'm understanding, you see? But all of this is a happening in what is, that if the mind was not identified, you see, then you are the isness. That's what is. See? So, enlightenment doesn't happen to an individual, you see. The individual doesn't awaken. Awakening in the real sense, if we're talking about one pure non-duality, there's no pure non-duality, just non-duality, you know. Awakening would be the disappearance of all this. When you're dreaming and you're having a dream, if you're identified with the dream, the moment you awaken, what happens to the dream? See, the awakening is not for the individual or the image or the character in the dream. The awakening is from the dream. Well, same here. The awakening or enlightenment is not for the individual. If anything, is from the belief that I'm an individual. So healing is not for the individual. Healing is from the belief that I'm an individual. That's why this is something we cannot talk about. I don't talk about enlightenment. I don't talk about awakening. I don't talk about any of this, because nothing could happen. None of that could happen to me. But what I can talk about, and if you interpret that as awakening, well, I don't know, call it what you want, but what I can talk about, and it's that direct experience. This is something you can experience right now, and that could be called awakening if you want to use that word. I prefer not to use any word. Is that right now, if you don't identify with any thoughts, just don't believe any thoughts. It doesn't matter. The thoughts, I am doing this, or I am this person, or life is, this is what's happening, or I'm seeing anything. Just don't identify with any thoughts. Don't identify, don't believe any thoughts. Okay? When you don't believe any thoughts, what's left? What's left is life. It's direct experience. And if you're not identified with any thoughts, let me ask you, are you suffering? Are you afraid? Are you worried? Or let's use another way. Is suffering happening? Is worry happening? Concern? Fear? None. Of course not. Because that, if the mind is not there to make an interpretation, none of that would be there. You see? Only when the mind makes an interpretation is a worry, fear, concern, desire, all this stuff comes up. But if the mind is not engaged, is not identified with anything, if you don't believe the content of the mind, you're experiencing what is referred to as the peace that passes all understanding, which is life itself. You see? So you want to have the experience of the famous enlightenment? Let's put it to the test. Don't identify with any thoughts right now. Don't believe anything you think. That's it. Just don't believe in any thoughts. Don't believe anything. Just simply be. Okay? You see? You're being right now. Okay, well, that's the famous enlightenment, if you want to call it that way. See? And in the life, thoughts will appear, sensations will appear, all things, everything is going to appear, but won't affect the essence, the background, which is what you are. And this is what these videos are pointing to. So again, I don't know why the person may come up with the idea that I have awakened or I'm enlightened, or if my awakening, I never had an awakening. This is it. This is it. The awakening is not for the individual. However, if you want to use that term, yeah, the moment there was a recognition that it's just the most ordinary thing, it wasn't anything special, well, that recognition, if you want to label it whatever you want to label it, that's fine. I prefer not to label it anything. It's just that, oh my God, so this is it. So it's the most ordinary thing. Life simply is. And for many years, I pursued some sort of a spiritual goal, Maybe I thought that if I did a lot of, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, any practice or something, the mind will stop thinking, or I will not have any thoughts. or I'll be in this blissful space. And yeah, for many years I thought that, and then life said, well, just keep doing whatever you want, and in the end it's much simpler than that. There's nothing you need to do. That's why it's simple. You're trying to do to become, but in reality you simply are. And yeah, after all the search and everything, then the recognition became crystal clear, mostly out of the fact that I realized that no matter what I do, I was never accomplishing anything new. I might have little, moments of tranquility, but they wouldn't last. And then life says, okay, well, nothing here is going to last because everything here is transitory. This world of experiences is based on change, is based on opposite. But what you are, however, is not something that lasts. What you are is eternal. You see? So I don't use the word it would last because it would suggest that something that lasts eventually won't last. No, but this is eternal. It's always. Yes, even while I may be having a toothache. Yes, even while I may be having a headache. Yes, even while I may be feeling uncomfortable. Yes, even while I'm having pleasure, it doesn't matter. Whatever seems to be happening in the surface is just a movement of life, of the appearance. But what you are is in which all of that movement seem to appear, and the way you can become conscious of that, which is the most obvious thing that is just being overlooked, is by not interposing or imposing any evaluation, any thought, any interpretation. You see, if you don't think, if you don't believe any of the thinking, then what is left? Well, this is it. That's what you are. That's the point here. And yes, for the mind that is very engaged in some kind of seeking, I truly believe that I have to have a particular experience or enlightenment feels in a particular way, either because I've heard somebody says that or whatever. As long as that belief is in there, is very ingrained, well, it's going to be very difficult to see the obvious because the mind will not allow you. You will be hanging on to the belief so strongly that no, when I become enlightened, this is what's going to happen. When I awaken, this is what's going to happen. My life is going to be whatever. If you believe that, then you'll continue doing whatever you think you have to do in order to achieve that. You see? And again, all that is doing is overlooking the obvious. The obvious is that this is it. You see? Someone who's dealing with a lot of suffering, for example, may not like to hear these words because they want to stop suffering, but they're not really hearing the words, because what I'm inviting you is to the absence of suffering, which can happen right this moment if you don't believe the content of the mind. But someone has to be ready for this. These videos are not for everybody, and I'm aware of that, but this is what life is using this instrument called me to say. And if you feel this resonates, wonderful. If you feel it doesn't, wonderful too. Life has a plan for you. Because in the end, it's not even you who chooses if you want to listen to this information or not. This is just what happens. And it's not you who come to this recognition. That just happens if it's supposed to. But as I always say, if life has you looking for this kind of information, well, it could be said that through this instrument called you is beginning to recognize the simplicity and the obviousness of what is. So to me, that's a motive for celebration. And that is the inspiration that came through this instrument. That's what I felt inspired to share in regards to that question. I hope it served. And as always, may peace permeate the mind so that love can be extended.